Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. This is the first of a four-part series, Real Estate Academy Property Management course. This is Victoria Beal with the Ohio LTAP Center, and I'm very pleased to be working with my colleagues from the Office of Real Estate who will be providing all of the instruction for the course today through Thursday. Before I turn things over to them, I would like to ask everyone who is participating to please look in your GoToWebinar box and look for the questions section. If you wouldn't mind, please dropping me a hi or hello in there, because this is how we're going to ask you to communicate with us as the webinar goes on, either if you have questions during the presentation or when we get towards the end to be able to respond to the various quiz questions that our presenters have for you. Quite a few of you are finding that box, so I appreciate that. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Tyler, who's one of your presenters for today. Tyler, you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
Hello, welcome. My name is Tyler Prose. I work in the real estate property management section at ODOT Central Office. This meeting or this webinar is to discuss the 7300 manual for property disposals. My name is Tyler Prose. Like I said, I work in real estate Central Office, and my co-presenters are Scott Recker and Jared Miller. Do you want to introduce yourself, Scott?
Sure. My name is Scott Recker. I'm the Realty Specialist Manager in District 1. I've been with ODOT for about 18 years, a little over 18 years, and have done a lot of property management in District 1 with our US 30 and 24 projects, where we had quite a bit of excess land that we accumulated with those projects, and sold most of, I think we got all those excess land parcels now sold. That we just sold the last two of them in Paulding County on US 24. So I think we have everything cleaned up now. So be helping Tyler out as much as I can.
Much appreciated. Jared, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Jared Miller, head of the appraisal section in Central Office. I'm going to be just presenting a small section on how you value these disposal parcels and the different methods and techniques that you can use. So I'll be doing that, I think, later this afternoon.
Great. As Victoria said, we have this class broken down into 4 different modules. Today is module 1, and we're going to be discussing the general procedures for all disposals. These are going to be your pretty simple routine steps for disposals. Generally, these steps must be done first, as you do not want to incur unnecessary cost or staff time until you're sure that you want to dispose of these properties. All right, learning outcomes. At the end of this module, you will be able to check for FHWA funding, coordinate district reviews, obtain valuations, identify when to seek central office approval. You'll also be able to seek FHWA approval, explain how an ODOT employee may request a disposal, and state how ODOT protects utilities. You'll also be able to process payments from sales, track and report all disposals, create and maintain an excess lands inventory. Okay, we're going to get right into the heart of it, and we're going to talk about, or we're going to go through the definition of the disposal in the CFR. If you have any questions, in the bottom of the slides, there's always a listing of where this information can be found. Per 23 CFR Part 710.105 Part B, disposal means a transfer by sale or other conveyance of permanent rights in excess real property. When the real property interest is not currently or in the foreseeable future needed for a highway, right-of-way, or other uses, the term disposal includes actions by a grantee or its sub-grantees in the nature of relinquishment, abandonment, vacation, discontinuance, and disclaimer of real property or any rights there within. Okay, that's a lot of legal mumbo jumbo. Legal mumbo jumbo. So let's get back, or let's break it down. The first part, or other conveyance. This shows that a disposal isn't just an excess land sale of fee-owned property. It can include a number of different types of property transfers. Next, we see the word permanent rights. That tells us that a disposal would not include things like leases, rentals, and license agreements. All these items are covered in ODOT's Policy and Procedure Manual 7100. Next, I've highlighted the words not needed to illustrate that you will never dispose of anything we may need, either now or in the future. This includes wetland mitigation and slope easements or drainage easements, stuff like that. I've also highlighted the term disposal includes actions by a grantee or its sub-grantees. This means every LPA that acquires right-of-way in their own name with federal funds must abide by these rules and procedures. And it is up to the districts to make sure this happens. Next, we see disposals include relinquishment, abandonment, and vacation. As we discussed in the introductory model, this will not happen all the time, but you must know that and how to deal with it when it does happen in your district. I've also highlighted the words real property and any rights therein, as I wanted to draw attention to the fact that disposals are the conveyance of permanent rights, not just fee title. Everyone that's been in real estate learning has understood the bundle of sticks principle. You can sell off one bundle of the sticks and you still have the bundle. And the last thing, oh, sorry, my headphone fell off. And if you want to look this up, it is in 23 CFR part 710.105B. Written disposal request. Per the CFR 710.409G, any request for excess land disposal must be in writing. The request shall be maintained in the district disposal project file and provided to FHWA when appropriate. If a district freely chooses to dispose of a property, there will be no outside request. In this case, the district needs to create a short memo to file on their rationale for the disposal. The magic date. If any project authorization was prior to June 29th, 1956, prior to the Federal Highway Trust Fund establishment, even if it did have federal money in it, we are not required for they are not requiring reimbursement. So if you have a project that was commenced before June 29th, 1956, we do not need to check for federal funding. On every disposal the district will send form RE 7406 to Central Office Property Management to determine federal aid participation. As part of this mission, the district will identify the project parcels, the parcels involved, and the type of disposal request, and provide a copy of the acquisition instrument. If you provide all that, I personally take care of them and I will get it out as soon as I get the information. The more information you include, the easier it is for me to, if you can include plans, sheets, the more sheets, the better usually. All right, now let's look at the two forms I just discussed. This is the 7406 that you will turn into central office. It literally just lists the basic stuff of what I need is county route and section and what type of disposal, and the actual parcels that we want to dispose of. Once I get that and do my research, I come up with this letter with how it's going to be coded going forward. It usually doesn't take me too long to get this out. Obviously, the more information you give me, the easier it is. Sometimes it takes longer if I have to go research it with Donna in our records department. District approvals. District real estate is responsible for processing all disposals. The initial step in processing any disposal includes a review and sign off by all the folks listed on the slide. We have a handout for you that I'll get a handout to you later and for the later classes that will show that has examples on how to do this and how to track it. These reviews are needed to determine if a parcel should be disposed of. Every one of them needs to sign off and say that they are disposed, or it is able to be disposed of. The last two on this list are for when you are disposing of a facility property, i.e. a garage or a outpost. If you are disposing of a facility property like an outpost or a garage, you will also need to completely fill out the Office of Facilities Property Disposition Request form. That's on our website. In addition to all other approvals, the Central Office Deputy Director must approve of the disposal if it is a facility. Reviews to consider. Reviews should include consideration of ODOT's present and future needs related to existing, planned, programmed, or anticipated new transportation projects, public transportation facilities such as mass transit and park and ride lots, highway maintenance needs such as slope, drainage, access, outposts, or maintenance building sites. All disposal actions are subject to 23 CFR Part 771, environmental clearance. Environmental reviews are mandatory on all disposals regardless of funding. Depending on the level of review, the Office of Environmental Services may review and approve the environmental documents prepared by the district office. District review for a proposed existing land disposal shall additionally include consideration for the following: structures on the parcel and condition of the same, rental status, the special apparatuses such as oil and gas wells, underground pipelines, overhead transmission lines on the property, easements, permits, or leases on record or in effect, access availability, time of possession, assuming a sale is consummated. On an access mod, if district approves, it must be forwarded to CO, Office of Roadway Engineering, for review and approval. If approved, package is returned to the district to complete process. After the review by the district administrator, a plat and legal description of the parcel is prepared. After all approvals have been obtained, where applicable, districts will have the property valued. All property disposals must be valued and commensurate with ODOT Appraisal and Policy Procedures Section 4501, appraisals for disposal and real property. Multiple possible formats. Check with RSM for appraisal staff or appraisal staff for assistance. Per 23 CFR Part 710.403 Part E, current fair market value must be charged for the disposal of all real property interest in those properties if the properties were acquired with federal fund. Only exemptions for this is to be improved, or this has to be approved by FHWA in writing, and it would only be considered for the following: there is overall public interest based on social, environmental, or economic benefit, or for a non-proprietary governmental use. Support document must be clearly showed to benefit how this, or public benefits, and how the state will receive same. So we can get it less than fair market value if it's a public use, public utility, a railway, for a bikeway or pedestrian walkway, public transportation, or other transportation projects. ODOT Director approval is required for any disposals at less than fair market value, unless it's an EL auction at 2/3 or more. Next up, we have Jared to explain the different appraisal types.
Yeah, thank you, Tyler. So again, my name is Jared Miller with the Office of Real Estate in Central Office, Appraisal Section Manager. So as Tyler mentioned, the requirement is to get fair market value for any sale that we're going to have, any excess land that we're going to sell. The thing is, when you look at fair market value, it really is something that depends on what the market is. And you can have different types of value or different theories on how you approach the value for these properties based on who is requesting the sale, whether it be ODOT or an adjacent property owner or a buyer in general. And the other thing that I guess drives the value is the actual property itself. What can it be used for? Can it be an independent use on its own, or is it a property that has to be assembled to an adjacent property? These are the kind of things that we look at in order to determine what approach to the valuation we're going to do. The other thing I'll throw out there sort of right off the bat is these aren't necessarily simple appraisals. Typically, these appraisals are relatively complex, and if you don't feel comfortable in the district making a decision on how this should be valued, by all means, reach out to somebody in central office or another district that maybe has more experience, and we can help guide you through this because, once again, it is relatively complex. It's not something that's always intuitive on how you approach these. So keep that in mind as I'm going through here. I'm just going to give you a very high level of these approaches today to give you an idea that at least these approaches are out there. There's 4 different types that you can do and have that in the back of your head, but you're probably not going to have enough to feel confident making a determination on which one to use in every situation. So feel free to reach out to us. So one of the things another thing I want to mention is that ODOT does take the prudent seller approach. And what that means is that we are going to take whichever type of valuation creates the greatest value. That is the approach that we should use. And I have the 4 approaches that we're going to discuss right there in this first slide. It's the assemblage value, the traditional value, the over the fence value, and the enhancement value. Now, I'll cover each of those a little bit more in detail right here. So Tyler, if you don't mind, I'm just going to have you flip slides rather than me take control. So I'll go ahead and have you flip the slide. All right, so the assemblage value is what you would typically think of when you think of very low utility property that's just going to be assembled to an adjacent owner's land. When we use this is when ODOT has a piece of property that we don't want. It has very low utility. It's typically landlocked or unbuildable, and we just want to get rid of the maintenance issues and pass it off to an adjacent property owner. The key here is ODOT wants to sell. We didn't have a property owner come to us and say, will you sell this to me? It's ODOT wants to sell this. That's when we use this value. ODOT initiates that sale. We use assemblage comps. And that's really where you're going to see the difference in these approaches, or what type of comparables, what type of comps do you use for the appraisal. In this situation, we're going to use very low utility comparables. So sale of either excess land sales, so sales that are landlocked that ODOT has, or we're going to use very low utility, and maybe it's in a floodway, and that also would be a low utility sale that we could use. But the idea is we're finding sales that were bought by an adjacent property owner that the land itself has very low utility. Those are the type of sales you're going to use in this. The reason we do this is because, number one, ODOT wants to get rid of the maintenance of this property, and number 2, it gets it on the county tax records where they can start to accrue taxes on it. ODOT is a tax exempt entity, so as long as we own the property, it sort of hurts the county in the fact that they don't get tax income from it. As soon as we sell it to a private owner, they begin to collect taxes again. So Tyler, how do you advance the next slide? So next is the traditional value. The key here is that the property has an independent use. ODOT does sometimes buy properties that can be developed. They can be developed as a residential site. They could be developed as a commercial site. They have some use where they could actually be used by anybody in the market. Anybody would buy it, not just an adjacent property owner. So this is a good approach when you have those situations. It really doesn't matter who initiates the sale on this. It could be ODOT, it could be Costco when it comes in and they want to buy our property. It could be an adjacent property owner. It really doesn't matter because it's an independent, it has independent use, and anybody could buy it, anybody could use it. This is what I'd call the standard approach. You're looking for other similar sites that are usable, developable, and you're using them as the comparables. So pretty much anytime you've seen an appraisal for your house, or you've seen an appraisal in general, this is typically the approach you're going to see. Other comparables that have utility to them. Let's go to the next slide, Tyler. The third one that I'm going to discuss, and probably the one that we use the most, is the over the fence valuation. The keys here are that the property owner, typically an adjacent property owner, has initiated the sale. So they've came to ODOT and said, hey, will you own this little chunk of land over here, will you sell it to me? What we do in an appraisal standpoint here is we look at the property as what value would it take on if it was assembled to the adjacent property, the person that requested to buy the property. And so what you end up having is, let's say there's a 100-acre farm adjacent to our half acre of excess land. The 100-acre farm is worth $5,000 an acre, and our excess land of half an acre would also be worth $5,000 an acre. So if you do the math there, it ends up being about $2,500 is the value of our excess land, half an acre at $5,000 an acre. So that's how this approach works. And so what you're really doing is you're finding comparables to that 100-acre farm. That's the sales that you're looking for in order to determine the value. Once again, I said this is probably the most common because this is really in the last 10 years is what's happening. Is a lot of times an adjacent property owner comes to ODOT and says, hey, I'd like to buy this sale or buy this piece of property. And we end up using this approach as a good way to determine market value. I'll let you go ahead and flip to the next slide. The last one is one that we don't use as much, but can be used, and especially when you have a developer that maybe some sort of commercial development or things like that. And the key here is it's once again, property owner initiates the sale. And the best way to think about this is the reverse of our before and after appraisal. And the fact that it is a before and after appraisal, but in the before situation, it's just the adjacent property owner's property. In the after situation, it is the adjacent property owner's property plus our excess land parcel. And when this creates enhancement value is when you have a situation where our excess land gives them access to, let's say, the highway system somewhere. Our property was dividing their property from US 23, and they wanted access to US 23. Well, by buying our property, now they got access there. And that increases the property of their entire, development site. You also see this with sometimes when a building is already built on a site and they need to get circuity around their building, or they need more land to develop. All of these situations are where it can actually produce more value than just what you would have by having that small parcel by itself. It actually increases the value of the entire site. So that's when enhancement value is used. It's limited in when we use it, but really, like I said, the best way to think of it is sort of the reverse of the before and after that we typically see in our the domain appraisals. Go ahead and have you advance to the next slide. All right, so here's a little summary of what I just went through. And this is a flow chart, real quick and simple flow chart, but it goes through the process. So first, you sort of ask yourself who initiates the sale, whether it be ODOT or an adjacent property owner. The next question is, does this property have an independent use? If ODOT initiated, if it does, then you're going to use the traditional approach. If it doesn't, then you're probably going to use the assemblage approach. If the adjacent property owner requested the sale, then you're going to see if it enhances the adjacent property. If it does, then you're going to use the enhancement value. If it doesn't, you're going to use the over the fence value. You also could have an adjacent property owner. I don't have a little dash line over, but you could have an adjacent property owner that requests sale of a property that does have an independent use, and then you would want to look at the traditional value as well. And once again, ODOT is a prudent seller, so we would look at whichever of these approaches creates the greatest value. One other thing I guess I really want to mention is, we're talking about these different approaches, and that each of these would come up with a different value for the same piece of property. Part of market value is the size of the market. When you're talking about excess land parcels, sometimes that market can be one person. It's a very small, limited market. When you have a limited market, you have a volatile market. When you have a volatile market, you have a volatile value. And so what I'm saying is, think of yourself as that one property owner that's interested in an excess land parcel. You could be willing to pay, that in my previous example, the $5,000 an acre, so $2,500 for that little piece of land. Or you could say, I'll only take it if it's $1. I'm helping you guys out by taking it back and maintaining this and using it as part of my field. So I'll give you $1, or you can give it to me for free. The key here is when you only have one person, that value is extremely volatile. Either they want it or they don't. And since you don't have other people in the market to competitive bid against them, you end up with this volatility. So just keep that in mind when you are selling excess land. Sometimes it's very difficult to come up with a value that always is going to work. Sometimes you'll go to the property owner and they'll say they don't want it. They don't want to pay that much, even though it is that valuable. They don't want to pay that. So I'll have you advance to the next slide. All right. So once again, here's my contact information. As you guys are going through these appraisal process with excess land, as I mentioned, we have people in central office that are more than willing to help you guys out. Feel free to reach out to us. Tim, Harvey, myself, we have a lot of experience with these, and we can usually provide pretty quick guidance on how to approach them. With that, I guess I'll open it up to any questions. Feel free to either, I guess, put those in the question box, and I'll answer the best I can.
I'm going to read off a couple questions to you that came in while I'm switching things over to our next presenter. The first one is, when reviewing disposals, how far into the future should be considered for any future plans?
I'll tell you, it's probably not my question to answer, but I would say that we should err on the side of keeping a piece of property if there's any potential in the future. So I would say indefinitely, as long as we think there's a potential that we need that property in the future, I would keep it. And this, I'm a little biased here because I worked in District 6 where I had to buy back a bunch of property that ODOT had sold off as disposals in the past. And we ended up paying millions of dollars for property that we probably pretty much gave away maybe 20, 30 years before that. So if you ask me, we should look as far in advance as we possibly can.
One more quick question, and then we'll get things going with Scott. In the traditional value, what is meant by improved value listed next to developable land?
So I think that one's for me. Maybe go back a couple slides and we'll go to that, maybe refresh. So it was in traditional value, so back 3 or 4 slides.
Scott, you'll have to do that since it's your screen now.
Okay. All right, and I'm sorry, read the question one more time.
Sure. In the traditional value, what is meant by improved value listed next to developable land?
Improved value next to developable land. Okay. So yeah, when we get into sales that are improved, so let's say that we did own a piece of property that has some structures on it. They should be looking at sales of properties that also have similar structures. So when I say improved sales, that's what I mean is the improvements. It would be buildings, it would be even maybe it's site improvements, maybe it has a well, septic, things like that. So you want to find comparable sales that have the similar improvements to what your subject does. Does that answer the question?
I hope so. The person can let us know in the question box if it did or didn't, but they said it does. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thanks. Now we can go over to Scott.
Okay. Just to go back to the first question that Jared answered, as far as how far into the future, I think one of the reasons that we have so many people at the district level that have to sign off on that, the capital programs administrator, the DDD, the planning administrator, the design engineer, all of those people, hopefully some of those know if there's any future plans for that area or that corridor that can say, hey, wait, maybe we should hang on to this for a while until we do such and such a project. We may need some of that. I know District 1, there was a parcel that we had along I-75 that we looked at selling probably 15 years ago, and our DDD said, no, we might want to do something with that at some point in time when we redo the interchange. We redid the interchange and didn't need the parcel, and subsequently sold it for a lot more money than we would have back then. But so hopefully with all those people at the district level, the decision will be made to hang on to it if they think there's any possibility that you may need that again in the future. As you all know, if you've been in this business, it's a lot more expensive to buy it the second time than it was the first time. So,
yeah, one of the
thanks,
things,
Jared, for that information.
yeah, no problem. I will throw one more thing in there. When you are selling a piece of property, I'm sure you guys are gonna cover this later, but you don't have to sell the whole thing. Sometimes, you know, you'll talk to your DDD and they'll be like, well, we might need to work on this slope in the future. So you keep a 10-foot strip along the roadway that gives you room to work on that slope, but then you can sell off the area that's behind that. So just keep that in the back of your mind when you're doing property management. It's not an all or nothing. You can divide up these excess land parcels, sell some of it, keep some of it, and that's a good tactic for making sure that we keep land for future projects, but yet still getting rid of land that we're never going to use and can get back on the tax roll. So just an FYI.
Great point, Jared.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. District 1, we actually just did do one like that, we had central office appraisal go out. They saw some sliding in the slope and decided maybe we should relook at it. And we ended up keeping an additional 20 or 25 feet for slope repairs in the future and sold the rest of the parcel off. So thanks to Jared and his people that we were able to do that. So class, or it says class here, but everybody that's online here, you have Jared's information. From experience, let me tell you that he's a wealth of knowledge and can really help you out when you get into these selling the excess land and questions regarding value. So don't be afraid to reach out to him if you ever have any question or an issue with an excess land piece. That Jared and his people are really helpful on that.
Thanks, Scott.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to talk about some more general procedures that we have. Number one is FHWA approval, and per ODOT FHWA Program Stewardship and Oversight Agreement and 23 CFR Part 710.403, FHWA may not assign to ODOT the decision to any disposal on or within the approved right-of-way limits of the interstate. So including any change in access control. So thus, any disposal action involving interstate right-of-way must have the full written approval of FHWA. So no matter what, we have to go ahead and have FHWA approve anything we want to sell within the interstate's right-of-way limits. Other than that, FHWA has transferred to ODOT the right to act in its place and review and approve any disposals at fair market value, including disposals of access control for all non-interstate projects. And this assignment applies to projects, in case anybody wants to know, both on and off the national highway system. So what that means is if ODOT districts is processing a property disposal at full fair market value, and that property is not on an interstate, the district may approve the request without seeking FHWA concurrence. But we can only do that once we have exercised completing all the usual and customary internal and external reviews in connection with the disposal. Says here, any disposal at less than fair market value must be approved by FHWA where applicable. So if FHWA has money in it and you want to sell it for 2/3 of fair market value, you'll need to send that in to FHWA and get their approval to look for that. It also, both federal, as it says there, for park and rec area reviews, both federal regulations and state law requires that any excess land be reviewed to determine its suitability for park or recreational purposes. And for that, what we do is we send a request out to ODNR for all our excess land sales to see if they have any use for that in the future. And if the land is determined not to be satisfactory for those purposes, the district will include that finding to that effect in their file. So just keep something in file. I think what we do is we send a request to FHW or to, I'm sorry, ODNR. And if we don't hear back from them within a certain period of time on that letter, then we assume that they no longer require or would want that for anything. But most of the time, what they're going to want is anything that you have along a river or a scenic area that they may want to use in the future. All FHWA requests must be on the form 74-07 FHWA letter disposal transfer the parcel under the signature of the district deputy director. And this little matrix here will tell you what kind of approval. So if FHWA funded design and or construction, but not right away, then required approvals if you're less than fair market value is engineering review approval. If FHWA funded the right-of-way acquisition, then you'll get FHWA engineering and also appraisal review and approval. So we just have to send that into our FHWA, which was Abe, who's since moved on. Not sure exactly who that is just yet, but they'll go ahead, you send that over to them, and they'll send you a reply that says approved or whatever. Just put that in your file so that you show you've done that.
If you're going for FHWA approval, contact central office first, and we'll make sure it's the right way or sent to the right spot.
Yep. So when you do request that from FHWA, you want to send them a copy of all the district approvals, including Office of Roadway Engineering, if that one's applicable, a copy of the valuation or appraisal of the property. You don't need that if they did not participate in the acquisition. If known, a statement of the proposed use of the property, along with all plats, maps, legal descriptions. If a party requested it, send them a copy of that request. Also a statement that the property will not be needed in a foreseeable future, that present right-of-way is adequate under the current standards and a disposal will not adversely affect the subject highway. A statement that the property is not suitable for retention in order to restore, preserve, or improve the scenic beauty adjacent to the subject highway. A statement that the property is not adjoining any land that could be used to preserve natural beauty or extend a public park and has no foreseeable value for this purpose, and a copy of the environmental clearance for that. So basically, as much information as you can send FHWA on your request, the better off you're going to be. If FHWA funded design, like I said, then FHWA but did not participate in the buying of the parcel, then an engineering review is necessary, but no concurrence is required for FMVE. If they funded the purchase, then they must do both, or you must get both. Next would be disposal to a ODOT employee. Any extinguishment, access mod, vacation, or direct sale to the sole abutting owner benefiting an ODOT employee must be approved in writing by the Director of Transportation before any action is taken by the district. The employee must first notify their district deputy director and then submit a written request for approval to the director. The request must fully describe the proposed transaction and the employee's position at ODOT. And the requesting employee must also forward a copy of the request to ODOT's chief legal counsel. So therefore, if an employee is going to benefit from any of that, they need to make sure that everybody is aware of it and that they get approval of that before that's done. ODOT employees and their immediate families are forbidden from bidding on any excess land parcels. And finally there, at the bottom, the utility continued occupancy. Pursuant to revised code 5501.45 section H, no public utility shall be required to move or relocate any of its facilities that are located in or on the areas described in any conveyance, transfer, easement, lease, permit, or other instrument. So if you have utilities that are present on your excess land parcel, they cannot be required to move just so you could sell the excess land parcel. You need to make sure that they can continue to operate as they are there. Processing payments. All money received from property management disposals must be processed through the use of the form 24-1, which is a miscellaneous cash receipts. Show you a blank copy of that real quick. There's a blank copy of a miscellaneous cash receipt. You're going to put in who you got it from, your PID, county route section, that type of stuff, the information, and then at the bottom you'll check the correct box, whether it's a security deposit, sale of excess land, vacated, sale of a structure, any kind of access mod that you may have got payment for, types of things. It'll be done on this form 24-1, and just fill this out, get it signed and sent in to Columbus for that. So the RA 24-1, I said they'll have the receipt date, the definition of the property transaction, what the amount received was for, name of all the parties involved, pertinent check information. I usually just send a copy of the check in with it. You'll put in there, if let's say that the receipt you got is for the closing of an excess sale and you received a $10,000 deposit, you just put in there that this check is for the balance of that the $10,000 was received, and maybe put that earlier date on there. And then of course your district real estate administrator will sign that. Payments for disposals can only be accepted in the form of certified checks, cashier's checks, or money orders. So no personal checks on the sale of excess land for the deposit or the balance. You'll give this you'll give the check and this RA 24-1 to your district finance office, and they'll go ahead and process that for you. The district the disposal tracking and reporting. District is responsible for maintaining a reporting system of all disposals being processed within their district. We do that with the cumulative report. So each quarter we send, the district should send out to central office, and Tyler usually sends out a reminder of that to the district REAs that time is approaching. So within 10 days of each fiscal year quarter, and then a final report by the end of July, we should give the district should send into central office all those properties that they closed or sold during the year. So don't send it in if it's just a deposit. You just want to make sure that you just send it in when we do the final closing, and just have that information on that 24-1. And there's a cumulative report. This one was, you can see it's for District 6. That was the second quarter of fiscal year 2018. Who they sold it to, the date, the acreage, county route and section. Says it was a transfer for $26,000. So it's fairly easy. It's out there, I believe, electronically now. So all you do is go out, fill it out, and save it, and then central office can Tyler can go ahead and get that information and put that in their files. The disposal project files, each district is responsible for maintaining a separate and complete file for each disposal being processed. The project management file maintenance form 74-12 should be at the front of each project file and be kept up to date as the disposal is processed. Keep a good paper and audit trail on all disposal actions. The more documentation you can save to make sure you followed each and every step, the better off you are. The district is responsible for retaining files in accordance with all retention schedules. Detailed file notes on form RE 74-17 shall be maintained and kept in every disposal project file. It's kind of like your negotiator notes, only it applies to excess land sales. So it's good to just keep those up to date. So if you ever need to check back on something or anybody is reviewing that, they can easily see everything that transpired. Each district must maintain an accurate, up-to-date inventory of excess lands in conformance with Ohio Revised Code 125.16. Excess land report is maintained on a shared real estate only drive. Government Accounting and Standards Board, the GASB-34, tells us that ODOT must submit annual report on the sale and disposal of right-of-way land at the end of each fiscal year. All receipts of funds for sales or disposals of excess right-of-way lands need to be reported, as I said earlier, on Form 24-1. You must do, even if it's a transfer of property where no money was received. In other words, you're transferring an excess land piece, let's say to the city or a county or another governmental agency that you did not charge them any money for. You still need to fill out an RE 24-1 and put it in the file and explain why it was at no cost, but that needs to be in there. Each year, by the June 30th of each year, the district must send an annual update of their excess land inventory to central office property management. Each year, the district real estate administrator must determine a category status for each parcel of excess land and log it on the district inventory. Those categories are, as you see at the bottom of this slide, as what they are. So hold, an excess land parcel may be placed in this category for one of the following reasons. The parcel is required for a current or future project. A public agency by a formal written request has expressed an interest to acquire the specific parcel for a public use, or the property is being held for optimum future return. You can categorize an excess land parcel as available for sale, which means processing the parcel for disposal should be done as soon as practicable. May include joining smaller contiguous remnants into one parcel for sale. And then the last one there, negligible, is usually a small and non-contiguous parcel that has little or no value, and basically it's not worth processing it for the sale. Just very small excess land pieces that are just outside the right of way that's needed, and it really has no value to it whatsoever, and would cost more to process it than it would for any kind of income that you would get from it. Again, the department's excess land report is now maintained on a shared drive, and that is a location to update and add new properties. So each year we talked about the annual review. Each district must review and reconcile their excess land inventory. They may change categories. A property that might have been hold the year before can now be ready for sale. Submit that to CO, and then CO will then reconcile the statewide inventory. Okay. Now we can just review some of the learning outcomes we had at the beginning there. First up, how do you check for FHWA funding when processing a property disposal? Again, you send the CO property management to Form 7406, requesting a records search on the parcel and the project that was required under. Tyler will go ahead and process all the requests, and you hear back from him shortly in writing. And then the magical date when you don't have to check on FHWA participation is anything acquired prior to June 29th, 1956. District reviews, again, who signs off on those? We went through District Deputy Director, the Capital Programs Administrator, District Planning Administrator, District Design Engineer, Highway Management Administrator, Environmental Coordinator, District Real Estate Administrator, and when applicable, the District Business and Human Resources Administrator and District Facilities Manager. Those last two are only when you're selling a district facility, an old garage or an outpost or those types of places. Then you want to make sure that they're aware of it and they can sign off on that. And again, as we talked before, the reviews consider existing and planned projects, public transportation needs, highway maintenance needs, environmental clearances. When do you obtain valuations? Don't get an appraisal done until all district and CO approvals have been secured. You don't want to go out and have either hire a consultant or have Jared and or one of his people prepare an appraisal for you, only to find out that the planning administrator feels that we should hang on to that because of future project. You don't want to waste money or people's time for that until you make sure you have all the approvals for those. You might seek CO approval on an access mod. You always need to get central office roadway engineering approval before concluding it. On disposals of less than full FMV to other governmental agencies must be approved by the director or their designee. And currently that designee is Drew Gilmore, our real estate office administrator. So if you're going to sell a parcel for less than full fair market value to another governmental agency, you must have Drew or the real estate office administrator sign off on that. And also you have to get CO approval for any office of facilities and any facilities properties to be disposed of. All right, the first bullet here, remember, you do not have to seek FHWA approval in a number of instances under our stewardship agreement. But when you do, it must be on Form 7407, FHWA letter disposal, transfer of parcel, under the signature of the District Deputy Director. And again, it should include all those approvals, your appraisal, your plat, as much information as you can give them so they're able to make a good decision on that. And I've found in the past, it's always been pretty quick. You send them that information and they'll get back to you fairly quickly as far as what that it's approved or not for sale. The second item there, when an ODOT employee may request a disposal, whether that's an access mod, a vacation, or direct sale, benefiting an ODOT employee, it must be approved in writing by the Director of Transportation before any action is taken by the district. Again, ODOT employees and their immediate families are forbidden from bidding on any excess land. And then how does ODOT protect utilities? Is pursuant to the revised code, no utility shall be required to move or relocate any of its facilities that are located in the areas described in any conveyance. We can put a reservation clause in our disposal instruments protecting their right to continue to occupy that area for that if they are present and we still want to sell it, we can sell it with the utility on there with a reservation clause. All money received, again, from property management disposals must be processed using the form RE24-1. We showed an example. It has a wealth of information for the transaction. Again, payments for disposals can only be accepted in the form of certified checks, cashier's checks, or money order. To finalize the receipt of payment for disposal, the original completed RE24 payment and attachments are submitted to the district finance office for processing. How we track and report all disposals. Within 10 business days at the end of each quarter, the district will submit the cumulative report of sales of disposals of excess right-of-way to central office property management. Once received, central office property management will reconcile the summary with all the RE24-1s on file and work with the district if there's any discrepancies. And then each year by June 31st, the property management section will provide a cumulative report to the Office of Fiscal Reporting. Fiscal Reporting will then conduct an independent reconciliation on the summary report along with all RE24-1 forms on file. The last bullet is what we just covered at the end of this module, which is each district must maintain an accurate inventory of excess lands in conformance with Ohio Revised Code 125.16 and also GASB-34. So by June 30th of each year, the district must review and reconcile all their excess land inventory on a parcel by parcel basis and send an updated inventory to central office property management. Each year, the district real estate administrator will determine the category of each parcel of excess land and log it on the inventory. Again, those categories are hold, available for sale, or negligible. Okay, questions. I think I saw one pop up.
Actually, I've been sending them over to Tyler as you were talking, so he's got them all answered.
Are there any other questions people have, or?
Not that I can see in the question box.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Scott.
I will send it back to Tyler for quiz.
Okay, Tyler, switched it back to you.
All right. Okay, we have some quiz questions here. We're probably not going to get through all of them. I think we're done in a few minutes. So I will send the questions and the answers out to everyone later today. Number one, true or false? In 23 CFR Part 710.105 Part B, which defines and provides for various terms and conditions in processing a disposal, is only applicable to state transportation departments.
If you guys would please put your answers in the question box and I'll read those off. You can even just put T or F and send it in. That would be fine. Getting a lot of Fs.
Well, those people would be correct. It also includes subagents and recipients that are listed in that part of the CFR. Okay, number two, true or false? The federal definition of disposal includes real property or any rights therein, which would include disposal of things other than just fee title, like access limitation rights. True or false?
Okay, we'll see what starts to roll in. Oh, I'm getting T's this time.
Man, we got
Lots
some
of T's.
smart people today. That would be true. Just like the bundle of sticks theory that's always floated around in real estate. What is the magic date that you do not need to get federal funding, or you don't need to check for federal reimbursement?
June 29th, 1956. That's what's coming
Man,
in for everybody.
that is correct. Man, you guys are good. Number 4, name 5 people that have to sign off on a disposal. There are more than 5, but just 5. Actually, you don't need to pull this one because, oh, there they are. Everyone could write different ones. So those are the normal people that you need to have sign off. And the bottom ones are applicable when you are doing a facility disposal. Number 5, district disposal reviews should include consideration of ODOT's present and future needs related to.
They could just do A, B, C, or D on this one.
Yeah,
One person said all. D.
that person
they're
is
all.
correct.
They're all getting at that. Okay.
Yeah, everything here is stuff that we need to be looking out for. Like your question is, how far out do you need to be looking? You need to be looking out as far out as you can. You can see some parcels are right next to the road. We might need it. Some parcels are a little bit further away. Probably don't need that for the road. So number 6, true or false, environmental reviews are mandatory on all disposals regardless of funding.
Lots of trues coming in.
Man, you guys are smart. Of course, we are the state. We have liability, or we have to be held liable. Next one, number 7, true or false, part 23 CFR, or per 23 CFR, part 710.403E. Current fair market value must be charged for the disposal of all real property interest if those properties were acquired with federal funds.
Oh, the T's all came in at once. There's a bunch of them.
Well, they would be wrong. That's a false. We may transfer for public, non-proprietary uses, which would include a reversionary interest. So if it is a state-funded school or a local, if they've had state money given to them, they are eligible. But that has to be a continued public use, and that's where the reversionary clause comes in.
I won't tell on those who answered true.
Number 8, true or false, ODOT director approval is required on any disposals at less than fair market value unless it is an absolute auction at 2/3 or more.
Oh, they're hesitant to answer now. One person's daring, couple of them. We have 2 trues, 1 false, more trues, another false. Now they're kind of mixing up true and false, true and false.
The answer is true. If it is less than fair market value, you need the signatures, or you need the director's signature. Okay, number 9, FHWA requests must be on what form? And again, this is A, B, C, D, E.
Yeah. C?
That is correct. That's pretty easy. Yeah, and you can find these forms on our website. Real easy to find. Okay. Payments for disposals can be accepted in the form of.
Certified check, someone put in.
Yes, ma'am.
Cashier's check, money order.
Yes, those are the 3. We do not want cash. We do not want an ODOT person responsible for carrying around large sums of money. So we get certified checks, cashier's checks, or money orders. Number 11, per 23 CFR part 710.403F, the federal share of the net income must be used for blank projects.
Right away, that's what someone said.
Kind of. They're actually Title 23 projects that if we sold something that had that money into it, it has to go back to that project, that Title 23 project. If you have questions about that, you can contact me if there's a specific case you have a question for. Number 12, each district is required to submit a cumulative report of sales and disposals of excess right-of-way form RE or 7425 to central office property management every.
Well, we have a couple of people that chose D. One person chose quarter. Another person chose C.
Well, I
Nobody's
think
chose A.
it is B. It is quarter. Every quarter, 15 days before the end of the quarter, your REA will get an email from me that says you need to turn all this stuff in. We need it. It's part of our statute. So yes, that is quarter that I will be asking for that if they don't send it in ahead of time. Okay, what are the categories of excess land parcels?
Don't have to type all three. You can just submit one. All right, hold, sell, NEGLI.
Yep. Good. Hold, available for sale, and negligible. Those are the three classifications that we have in our state. And the last question for the day, true or false? Under our stewardship agreement, districts do not have to seek FHWA approval in a number of instances when disposing of excess land.
True is what someone said.
That someone is correct.
They're all getting it now.
Yeah. That is actually the last question, or the last question of our quiz. I
Great.
think we are done.
We're a few minutes over, but we appreciate everybody hanging in there. We will be sending out a copy of the slides from today very shortly, so you'll have that in your email, and we look forward to having you on tomorrow's session. So everyone take care, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.